Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Emily Campagno here with my co-host, Harris Faulkner. And also joining us today, Martha McCallum, Carly Shimkus, and Brian Kilmeade. Now, we begin with classified documents found at a private office used by President Biden. They were found only days before the midterms, and it's raising a lot of questions. The documents date back to Biden's time as vice president. His attorneys found them in a closet while cleaning out an office at the Penn Biden Center in Washington. Biden used that office from 2017 to 2020. The White House says it immediately handed them over to the National Archives. The discovery has prompted a DOJ investigation. A federal prosecutor is now reviewing the classified documents. And watch as the president ignored questions about the discovery when asked about it yesterday in Mexico City.
Who we want to thank.
Any comment on the documents, sir?
But it was just 4 months ago that President Biden criticized his predecessor over his handling of classified documents following the FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago. Remember this?
When you saw the photograph of the top secret documents laid out on the floor at Mar-a-Lago, what did you think to yourself, looking at that image?
How that could possibly happen, how anyone could be that irresponsible.
And it appears the media is already downplaying the discovery.
Tonight, the White House is acknowledging that a small number of documents marked classified were found in a locked closet at the Penn Biden Center in Washington, D.C. That office had been used by Joe Biden after he left the vice presidency, but before he became the president. And the White House says the papers were discovered the day before the midterm election and were turned over immediately.
We are told that there are only a handful of these classified documents.
How significant is it that these documents were self-reported, voluntarily turned over?
I think the self-reporting here is probably the single most important part of this situation. It indicates a lack of intentional conduct. It's completely different from the Mar-a-Lago case.
Oh, Harris, I heard you during that time.
So, look, they were going to move, make some movement, I guess, there at the Penn Biden Center locations. And so they had a private attorney come in that process. So they I guess knew at least there were some sensitive papers there, perhaps just legally for the Penn Biden Center and the business that they do philanthropically. Who knows? But the fact that an attorney found this, just stumbled upon it. I asked some of the questions that the former chair of oversight, who was on with me last hour, Jason Chaffetz, is asking. And that is, how long have those papers been there? And it's a non-classified facility. So who else had seen those papers? And what did they do with the information? Are we going to see depositions from people who maybe... Now, Jason didn't go that far. I'm going farther. Are we going to see depositions from people who may have read some of that material? It's a small batch within a larger batch, apparently, of paperwork that had occurred during the time of then Vice President Biden's vice presidency. So I want to know, well, what are the contents? You don't have to give me all of them since they're, but are they something that a president should have declassified before this point? Trump could do that with the documents found at his home at Mar-a-Lago. Vice President couldn't do that. Biden, I don't think he can do it now, but that's a question I would ask too. Would he cover his tracks now? That's a good question for you. Could he do that?
That's a great question. So as vice president, you can declassify or classify documents that you've already classified. So just to be clear, you can declassify if you are the one that classified them to begin with. Kilmeade, Harris raises a ton of great questions, obviously, and at the end of the day, this is a president who had classified documents in a non-classified, non-secure facility whose team is saying, oh, well, it's okay, though. We submitted them, so it's all good. And then the apologist media comes in and says, it was just a small amount, so all is okay. And the American people are supposed to look the other way. No wonder half of Congress is calling for an impeachment.
So a little thing I was encouraged by, the first alert I got on my phone was from NBC, and the next one was from CBS, and the question was from a non-Fox reporter in Mexico City. So they are interested in this. Number two is, I like to see what else is in there. We got to find out what these documents are. So we go ahead and spirit it out to the U.S. attorney appointed by Donald Trump over in Chicago, at which time he, I imagine, is going to go through it and tell us what was there and then get an explanation. And if there is an explanation, I think the president's got to say, go through all your other stuff. What other classified information? This is not his only office. He's been out of office for 4 years. What other information do you have? And what else do you have to tell us and give him an opportunity? And just to clear that, we hear he's locked in a small small number are classified. Well, Donald Trump said I had paperwork. Donald Trump was negotiating on the other side. I don't think it was smart for Donald Trump to take it to Mar-a-Lago. I don't think it was smart to leave it there and not just hand over everything right away, especially because, he's not really into reading it anyway, except for a few momentums. But by the way, he was locked in Mar-a-Lago, and there was Secret Service there. There was no Secret Service at the Penn building in Washington. So I just think that there's a lot of questions, and so far I'm intrigued that other people are interested.
And I do think we should call it the Penn Biden Center.
What did I call it?
Don't leave out the Biden part.
Oh, okay.
That's why it matters, because this was a private office of his.
Right.
So I don't know that we necessarily know what he knew or what he didn't know. I can tell you that he might likely say, and we don't know, that he wouldn't remember what exactly was there. It's been some time. It's paperwork. But that's not absolution, actually.
And you know what's interesting, actually, Martha, to Harris's point, is that back in August, he was asked about the Mar-a-Lago raid. And interestingly, President Biden sort of, in an interesting way, defended it a little bit. He was like, well, it depends on the document. Depends on how secure. That's a direct quote. He said, there might be a specialized area. Classified documents was the question. And he says, I read it up, I lock it up, I give it to the military. So he was essentially implying through more words that he himself was like a traveling vault, and that anywhere he went, so too could these documents, and then it depended on the situation or the vault itself, the vessel at the end, whether it was okay. Was that in a way premonition? Did he actually might remember, or did he maybe just think that there was probably a chance that there would be likely, given his long tenure in Washington and his penchant for forgetting, that there might be a classified document in his wake?
Well, this is the problem. Look at General Petraeus, look at Sandy Berger, look at Donald Trump, look at Joe Biden now. They all, I would imagine, know that everybody does this kind of thing. So either this is an indictable offense and it breaks the law, or it doesn't. But we need to live in a country where people understand what the law is, and that when you're leaving your office, it is very clear. Sir, ma'am, let's go through every single one of these boxes, because you do not want to break the law and be caught with these things in your private office ever. But the problem is that, it's always qualified, like, oh, well, it wasn't important. Oh, it's a small amount. Either it's legal or it's illegal. And the other thing I don't like about this story so far is that, people are saying, oh, well, this is going to take the political wins away from the former president, because now this president also has this to be concerned about. No, two wrongs do not make a right. That would suggest that if they both did it, that somehow it doesn't matter. Maybe I'm being overly purist here, but I was raised to think that, rules are rules. And here's Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi saying just that. Watch this.
No one is above the law. And the rule of law in a democracy, has to be our standard.
No person is above the law, not even the President of the United States, not even a former President of the United States.
And then she went on to say a former vice president.
So is it going to be a special prosecutor for this?
Well, they have to treat them equally. They have to treat them equally.
Are they going to do a raid on a Biden residence?
Well, I just think these sound bites are so interesting to hear. And the biggest one, aside from Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi that we just heard, was Joe Biden himself on 60 Minutes. So horrified by the fact that former President Trump had these classified documents. It just gives Republicans so much material to work with. So now you have Biden supporters saying exactly what we were just talking about. Well, he handed the documents over right away. There were fewer documents than former President Trump. But it's really hard to take the moral high ground on this issue when both presidents had documents in their possession that they shouldn't have had. And I think James Comer has a really reasonable take on this whole thing. And he said that President Biden probably didn't do anything wrong here. Martha, to exactly what you were saying, that most presidents and vice presidents do have classified documents in their possession, but only one president had an FBI raid over this whole thing. And that's really the big issue here. Lastly, the Penn Biden Center is a think tank affiliated with the University of Pennsylvania. And according to the New York Post, since the school put Biden's name on the think tank, it's raked in millions of anonymous donations from China.
Of course.
So now there's this China element to this as well.
That name means something.
China.
2 months for us to find this out.
Well, that's the whole thing. Are these documents being kept either by the former president or the current president for a reason? And if they are, then there's a lot to answer for in both cases.
And also, Brian, what you said, that these documents were found on November 2nd, before the midterm elections, and we're only learning about
7
this
days.
now. Yeah.
That's right.
And turned in the next
6
day
days.
on the 3rd.
Exactly.
And when you bring in that China thread, and classified in general, national security is just like debt. It is bipartisan. It doesn't care what party you have. And so this should not be a partisan issue at all. This should be an American security issue, which means everyone should care about it, including every person in the media. Hey everyone, I'm Emily Compagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.